transitioning or in a state of decline? That was a question posed by the Los Angeles Times today.
The streaming bubble has burst, and it feels like no one's talking about it. I don't know if people don't want to admit it or they're just not thinking about it in this way, but that is what's happened. I'll explain. So, what is a bubble? It's when the value of something is artificially inflated and it grows and grows until it can't sustain itself anymore and it pops. And much like with the housing market, I don't see a clear way that this can end well. So this all started with Netflix. They were the first streamer dedicated to film and television. Netflix, when they started, were the only game in town. They started out like a lot of tech startups with loads and loads of VC money. They took that money and spent years licensing shows and making tons of original content at a very low price. And they did that by operating at a loss, on the promise that they would get big and popular and make a lot of money in the future. A lot of tech startups do this. They get all this investment money, they operate at a loss, and then when they grow their customer base, they start raising prices and introducing tiers and all these things because they have to make that money back. And that's exactly what happened with Netflix. They start showing commercials, they raise prices, they make it harder to share accounts. But the problem is, Netflix is not the only game in town anymore. Because as soon as they started gaining traction, Hulu came in, and Amazon, and Apple, and then Peacock, and Paramount, and Disney, and CBS, and HBO. All of them want their piece of the pie. And as you get more of these streamers, shows become less available on each one because they're not gonna license out shows when they can just put them on their own platform. So NBC, for instance, is not gonna license out all their hit sitcoms to Netflix and Hulu when they can force you to watch them on Peacock. But of course, people don't wanna pay for a million streaming services, especially with prices going up, and especially with everything being a subscription now because we live in hell. So people start canceling plans. And then there's a huge problem because all these companies who've been operating at a loss now are not able to make back the money they were supposed to make. And then you see things like Netflix stock plummeting a few years ago. Investors get scared and they don't want to invest anymore, and all the money dries up. Add to that COVID, add the WGA strike, the SAG strike. We got IATSE heading into negotiations this summer, and where does that leave us? There's just no money anymore. Unless you're Disney, making record profits and laying people off anyway because you can. Now, you could make an argument that these studios wasted a lot of money when they had it, and I would make that argument because I worked at a studio. A lot of the people who run them are not smart. But regardless, we're now in a position where Hollywood, for the most part, is basically broke. And I honestly don't see a way out of it because the reality is film and television is expensive to make. Yes, technology has made a lot of advances and you can do crazy things with your phone, but what makes a film expensive is not the camera. It is the writers and cast and crew and location and food and equipment and props and set deck and wardrobe and every other little thing that goes into making a movie or a scripted TV show, and we haven't even touched post-production. You know, the irony of all these directors telling people you can make a movie on your phone is that even they have movies they couldn't make because they couldn't secure the funding. I have some thoughts on where the industry is heading. If people are interested, I can make another video on it, but basically, it doesn't look good.